All right. Let's do this. Okay, we hit a little bit of traffic, but now we're ready to go. So we're in my office now. I'm sitting down here at the computer. What we're going to do in these next series of videos is I'm going to cover some of the types of questions that you will encounter during your MBA interview. Now, there's no real set of questions. Each school will choose the questions that they're actually looking for in their candidates. So the best way to do this, I see, is to divide all the questions up into different types, different categories. One would be core questions such as why an MBA, why now, walk me through your resume. The most important question, which is why this school? That is a key core question, one of the most important questions of your MBA interview. Other questions include what are your strengths and weaknesses. We'll look into that one by one. Another category of questions that may be asked are usually just behavioral questions, such as things like what do you like about your job? What don't you like about your job? What would you change if you were the CEO? These are questions that are kind of looking into how you would react or how you acted in certain situations. The third category of questions that we will look into is experience questions, where we cover all of the experiences that you went through in your professional career, such as leadership experiences, teamwork experiences, times that you have failed. What did you learn from them? And also times that you have, handled some sort of a conflict with a coworker or even a superior. We'll cover those in the following videos. And finally, we will also cover some of the team-based type of interviews that some schools are now using. So, if you're ready to do this, let's go.
When I die and the name of Therese, gonna go to the place that's the best.
Hey, welcome back. I had to re-record this entire portion, mainly because of some technical difficulties, but no problem. I also updated a few things. So here I am at the office again. We're still at the office. And first of all, I wanted to start talking to you guys about how to answer each of the the different types of questions that are going to show up on your interview, on your MBA interview. Now, I really want to dive deeper here into the underlying questions for each of the different types of the questions that the schools will ask you. So, you understand by now. You should understand that the interviewer is actually looking for answers to the questions he or she must provide to AdCom, right? In your mind, you might be thinking, what's the best way to answer each of the questions? Now let's go question by question. I'm going to start off with the core questions first. And the very first one is usually, walk me through your resume. Now, this could be asked in different ways. Some interviewers will ask you, tell me about your career. They might also ask you something like, tell me about yourself. Tell me what you've been doing. Tell me about your professional history. Okay, different ways to present it. It's just a different packaging for the same question. First of all, here's the problem. When they ask you, walk me through your resume, most candidates will simply just do that. I mean, that's all they'll do. They'll walk the interviewer through their resume. They end up focusing just solely on the professional steps they took throughout their careers. And many times they end up basically repeating the same information that's on their CV. Now, if you remember from before, I told you, being prepared is important for this process. You want to take at least 2 copies of your CV, just in case the interviewer forgot it on his desk, or didn't bring it. Doesn't matter. Be prepared. Take 2 copies anyway. One way or another, the guy has seen your CV or has your CV in front of him. You don't want to repeat that same information because that's just redundant. I mean, that's just giving him the information that he already knows. What are the interviewers really looking for here? I'm gonna tell you, like, the questions that he's looking for when he asks you this walk me through your resume question. The questions he's trying to answer by listening to your professional story are: does the candidate's profile fit compared with other candidates who have had similar careers? Remember, the MBA interview very different from the from any professional interview or a job position interview. They're not looking for your skills, not just your skills, but they want to see what your fit is. That's the primary goal, is to see how's your fit compared to other candidates who have been through similar careers or who are also building similar careers or have gone on to have been successful in for example your future goals. Another question they're trying to answer is how closely aligned is your pre-MBA work experience to your post-MBA goals. Okay, now this is extremely important. This must be plausible. You can't say, one thing with the other. It could be completely different. That's fine. I've had students get in who wanted to drop everything as in the banking industry and become an entrepreneur. That happens as well. But it needs to be realistic. Okay, it's not like okay, I come from, I'm a priest and I want to become president of the United States and I need an MBA for that. It's not gonna. It doesn't work out. I mean, sure, can it be possible? Sure, it's possible. But most schools, they're not looking for that. They're trying to see how closely aligned are those and how much how can they help you. All right. Schools are always looking for three things. One is your fit with the school. Two is your fit with the culture. Will you play along well with the other children at school? And third is to see how great of a program they can provide you with, because your success is their success, just like any other business in this world. Okay? If you buy a product from a company, you like that product, then you're going to become a witness, what do you call it? An evangelist of that product. You're going to go out there, you're going to tell your friends, I love this smartphone. I love this TV. Same program, same thing about the MBA programs. I came out from the MBA program. I've been successful. This is totally worth it. They're going to be the biggest evangelists of that school, but the school needs to be able to prepare the student for best possible success. Otherwise, it's just another student who graduated from our school, and that's about it. That's not what they're looking for. The third question, in your most recent role, they want to know, it's in the sense to figure out what your current role is, what kind of relevant impact have you made to your company, and what's like your frame of reference, like what's your credibility there, okay? Because being a CEO of a 3-member company is not the same as being the CEO of a 3,000-member company, with 3,000 employees. Being a CEO of a company with 2 employees is not the same as being the CEO of a company that has 3,000 employees. It's completely different. So in that sense, the credibility of being a CEO of the company is much greater than the other, right? So they're trying to make sure that they have a good idea of not the hierarchical structure of your company, but also how relevant is it? What kind of impact have you made to that company compared to the position that you're in? I mean, I'm not trying to take away the merit from being a CEO of a 2-employee company. That's great. It might be a startup. I hope you are changing the world. You can be a CEO of a food truck, basically, because it's 3 people working there. You can be the CEO, and if your food truck is doing great, I'm sure you're doing much better than many people out there. That's awesome. So please don't take me wrong. I'm not trying to take away the merit. I'm just saying that the school's responsibility here is to make sure that your position is relevant and it is and they have a clear picture of what your impact is. Okay, it's not really saying, oh, you're only a CEO of a 2-member team, then you're not a CEO. That's not it. That's not the point. All right, don't get me wrong. Now, the fourth final question that they're looking for in this one question. See, there are 4 underlying questions, and these are the 4 questions you need to answer. We'll get to that. Fourth one is there a clear career progression? Okay, does your level of responsibility really make sense? If you've been an intern for 8 years and you just got a promotion, there might be something wrong there. Okay, that might raise a red flag. You want to be able to show that your responsibilities have grown, that you've progressed in your career, that you've matured, that you've developed. They're looking for this, and it's not just about telling them. It's you really have to show them. Okay, we'll get to that. So walk me through your resume. You know, a lot of people say, "How do I answer this, Matt? I have no idea." To which I answer, "All right. My structure, the basic structure that I use. I mean, you can go ahead and use any one of them, but for me, it's the one that sets you up for everything else to come." Anticipating the questions that are going to come. Most of the MBAs and even executive program interviews, they all ask sort of the same questions just to get the feel for your fit anyway. So if you know the questions that are coming up, you want to set it up so that you give the interviewer the best picture possible. Start off by talking about what you graduated in, because you can use that later as a weakness maybe. You graduated in engineering. Later, you want to say an MBA is for me is a way to get back to school and learn the basics of business, which I didn't get a chance to do when I graduated in engineering. Okay, just an example. So that's why I say, start off with what you graduated in, and if you did an internship during college, schools are not really impressed by what you've been doing the first 3 years of your career. Again, like I said, they're looking for your progression, but they also take more, especially MIT, for example. They look more into the impact that you've had in the past 3 or 4 years, or in the most recent 3 years at your company. That's what they're looking for. They're not checking to see, I was the best intern out of 30,000 interns in this huge conglomerate. And that's not really the point. They want to see, that's not what they're looking for. So you can kind of breeze over the internships. Now, what's kind of cool is this, if you have an internship and you did it abroad, all right, let's say one of my students, I'm going to talk about one of my students. He's here in Brazil. He did an internship during college. He actually stopped school. He did an internship in Germany at a very renowned company there. I'm going to not say the company so no one is embarrassed, but let's just say it's a huge German company. And he did a 1-year internship there. And what was cool was we wanted to exploit that. We wanted to use that to his advantage. So what did I say? Okay. 6 months prior to going to his internship, or about 8 months or so, he knew he had to take a proficiency exam just to test his level of the German language. I told him, look, you talk about your school. I graduated at X university. I earned a bachelor's degree and I majored in engineering. It was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed this because I feel like I have a very, I hate the word analytic, but you can say, I'm very driven. I'm very mentally driven I was mentally challenged by what I had to learn to do well in engineering. And this was something very, very awesome because I actually learned more about myself during this time. See, you're revealing who you are by putting on these little details. During my school year, I wanted to include that I did an amazing 1-year internship at X company in Germany. And because there was a proficiency test required, 8 months before the screening process, I actually learned German. I took up private German classes. I began to learn the language. And all this in time, during my school work, with my school projects, it was very hard to manage my time, but I was able to do so even that early in my career, so to speak. Pause here. Time management is a skill that all MBAs love, okay? Because when you get to an MBA, there's going to be so much to do. If one of your weaknesses is time management, that's already frowned upon, and I'll tell you not to say that when we talk about the weaknesses, but it's something that it is required for an MBA program. Back to the story. So after I learned German, I took the proficiency test and I qualified, and out of X amount of students, I was selected for this internship. That's awesome, right? It's great. Talk a little bit about the internship. Now, this was a cultural shock for me. Every school loves cultural shock stories, okay? Anything that talks about how you had to handle something with a different culture. What was the difficulty? What did you have to learn? What was the challenge here? They love that stuff. They eat it all up. But you don't want to release it right now. Okay, remember, we're just kind of walking through the resume. We're gonna let the interviewer dig deeper. So you mentioned that it was just a great cultural shock. I mean, I had many lessons learned from it, and I realized how well I can get along with people who are not of my own culture. That's good right there. Okay, it's enough because the interviewer will be curious. Like, okay, so I wonder what this challenge was. He may even ask you a little bit later. Okay? Now, as you progress and you talk about your positions, again, do not repeat what's on your CV. It's counterproductive. You're wasting time. Right? Usually, since interviews are usually 45 minutes long, you want to be able to take the most advantage of your time to provide the interviewer with as much information as possible. So then you progress into your first positions, and as you go along, try to talk about why you made a specific move. What about this transition was tough? What was the hardest challenge throughout this progress? And when you're talking about it, let's say you do have a challenge. You had to manage a team. The first time you ever had to manage a team. That was probably maybe the greatest challenges of my life because up until then I had been more of an individual worker, and I worked well on my own. But having to manage a team, I really had to learn how to delegate tasks, how to really listen. These are little key words that you stick in there which kind of show your personality, and that's what they're looking for. And then you kind of get into more detail when you get closer to today. When in the last 3 years, talk about the impact that you've had. Talk about the rewards, the paybacks, regrets. It's good to say regrets. It's fine. I regret not being able to do this. But I do. And whenever you talk about, if you do decide to use a regret, okay, you want to be able to use that regret, but in a positive light. If you regret something and you mention it and you say it, then be sure that was actually one of my drivers for wanting to do an MBA, because I know that an MBA would have prepared me to handle that situation better. Another problem is this: a lot of students, when I'd say the majority of you guys, or of the students that come and ask for and do interview coaching with me, I mean, when I hit this question, the tendency is usually to talk too much. They try to give too much information. In my country, and in many other countries, there's a thing called a buffet. Restaurants that have like buffet where it's by weight. You get a plate, you get food from a wide variety of different dishes. You get you pile on the food on your plate, you weigh it, and then there's a price per weight. Imagine this question like a buffet. All right. You're going to a buffet with your interviewer, and you own this buffet. This is your buffet. The interviewer's there. What you don't want to do is shove all the food at him, throw everything. We have the Japanese cuisine, we have the Korean cuisine, we have the Brazilian, the Indian, the American hamburgers here, and pizza, and there's some European food here. Eat it all. Eat it all. You don't want to do that. Allow him to kind of look around and then select what he wants. What do you mean by select, Matt? What I mean by select is allow him to ask you the questions. Usually during this question, most interviewers will ask you follow-up questions. Rewinding. Let's talk about your challenge of managing a team for the first time. He might even ask you, why do you feel like it was so difficult? I mean, what could you have done better? What was the most challenging thing for that? And then again, anytime you're going to talk about a challenge, always show that you learned something, that you brought something, you took something away. So if you allow him to select the food that he wants to eat and ask you the questions that he wants to learn, you're helping him gather the information he needs to answer his questions. So do it in that sense. Now, I still don't know what I need to say, Matt. All right, fill in the blanks of your CV. You can try this at home. You can do this right now. You can, if you want to pause it, let's do this little exercise. Okay, take out your CV, take a good look at it, and memorize everything. Okay, and there are specific. I mean, you need to know your career inside and out backwards and forwards and every detail. Because if you give a detail wrong, if you say a wrong date, it's not only is it sloppy, but there is a negative connotation there. I mean, the guy might be like, wait a minute, is he telling the truth, or is there something that he altered? They're trying to check your validity as well. So that's important to make sure that you have all the details down. But when you look at your CV, don't talk about responsibilities, what I was responsible for. No, don't say that. When you say I was responsible for a specific position, that just, and you list out the things that you did, it just means you did what was expected of you. Do not say responsible for. I'm going to actually put it right. Do not say responsible for. Okay, that just shows that you're just doing what you were told to do, what you're paid to do. You want to show that you've gone beyond. You want to do more. So highlight that. Are there any positions? Are there any projects or any work that you did in your CV where you felt like, all right, I took it a step further. I did much more than I was expected to do, and this was the outcome. Okay, if there is, use that. You want to talk about that. It's important that you don't just focus on your positions and your responsibilities. No, you have to try to give in the information in between the lines. Okay, in between the lines, the interviewer is trying to get to know you better. So, as you're talking, okay, so as an analyst, when I got transferred to a senior analyst, yes, obviously my responsibilities grew, but that's when my time management skills came into play from having worked, the proficiency test in German, for example, having to practice for the German proficiency test in college and having to manage my time. That skill right there, it really helped me improve from being an analyst to a senior analyst because the responsibilities just tripled. And having done so, it's I'm glad that sometimes we go through some difficult moments, but later that comes back to help us make it easier. You see, you want to be able to make sure you're linking your story together well. When you do transition when you're getting your story into the more recent last 3 years, this is a good time to kind of include a leadership experience or the lack of a leadership experience. Any strength or gap, okay, whether it's a leadership position, maybe it's a challenge, a great accomplishment that you had, but also gaps are fantastic, okay? Don't be afraid of gaps, talking about your weaknesses or your gaps. These are great things to talk about, and we'll get into that later when in the gaps video. And you'll notice that part of the spiderweb method relies on this back and forth kind of thing. Think Quentin Tarantino. Okay, you bring you're giving pieces of the story together, and in the end, it all just kind of makes sense. So this is a great place to insert something. You can talk about. All right, when I was in my current position, which I've been working in for the last 2 years or 3 years, this was the first time I actually got a leadership position, or you can say actually I haven't had any leadership experience yet, and I knew I wouldn't get it. Also in the position that I'm in today. When you talk about the gap of having a lack of a leadership experience, it's not viewed badly. It's not frowned upon. It's something great because the schools want to develop leaders. That means you're a clean slate. That means you don't have any prior leadership fundamentals ingrained in your mind. I mean, you have the tools to be a great leader. You just haven't had the chance, the opportunity to show that. And this is a great moment to talk about it. Don't be afraid of exposing your gaps. All right, gaps could include, a lack of a business background, lack of a deeper finance background, accounting. It's all part of the package that the MBA is providing you with. And if you show them right away that, look, the interviewer is gonna understand that this is one of the reasons why you're doing an MBA. It's all part of the how do you say the buildup of why you're seeking an MBA. So if you do have a leadership experience, great, talk about it. Talk about what was the most challenging part of it, and what you learned from it, and that got you excited to become a good leader. And this is something that I really want. I learned from good leaders. from my superiors, and I wanted to take that a step further because I know that in my future in my future objectives, being a strong leader is going to be crucial to the success of whatever it is that I plan to do. I'm just saying whatever it is because you can fill in the blanks here. And even during this transitional period, when you're talking about the last 3 years, don't limit yourself about just talking about your career. This is also a great place to insert some of the social work that you've been doing, some extracurricular activities. Not necessarily talking about hobbies. They might ask you that might come up later on in the conversation, but right now we're talking about what's the kind of significant impact that you've been making not only in your company but in your society. Are you helping out at an NGO? Do you have like a donation program, ongoing donation program that you're always using? It's great to have this, okay? You should have it. If you don't have any community work, you need to go out there and start thinking about this right now, okay? Immediately. Mainly because all schools love candidates who do community work. All schools love people who do community work. Why? By doing community work, it shows that you are engaged in your community. It shows that you want something more than just professional success. You want to help others. If you're not helping other people improve their lives, then you're wasting your time. You're wasting everybody's time, right? We don't live in a world alone. We live in a world with people next to us. So you want to be able to show that you have community work going on. This is a great time to say it, apart from the responsibilities. And I've just been really, really happy with the work that I've been doing with my community group, and we've been helping the poor, really, just building some shelters for them, building them homes. So I spend every other weekend at a home for the elderly. I kind of take care of I try to volunteer as much as possible on my free time, mainly because I feel like I have to give back. I mean, I'm very adamant. I'm very driven to want to give back to the community. I want to make an impact on the world, and I want it to be a positive one. Boom. Okay, that's kind of what you want to show here. Now it's really important. This is a extremely important core question. Although it sounds very simple, walk me through your resume. Although it sounds just kind of like, all right, introduce yourself. It's not. You're setting the stage here. You're giving the plot of this Shakespearean drama that you're about to, Shakespeare in the sense not of tragedy, but Shakespeare in the sense of its grandeur. Okay, you're setting up the stage here. You're giving the plot here. You're giving the background information, right? And just like any great movie, you see a lot of movies nowadays. It starts off with like a backstory. I don't know how many of you watched Captain America: Civil War. That movie starts off with the backstory of Tony Stark's parents being murdered. Later to find out that I'm sorry if you haven't watched it. I don't want to spoil it for you, but find out that a main character actually had a hand in that. So it really, you're building the story right from the beginning. Okay, do not underestimate this question. Walk me through your resume. Really, really bring out the story in this answer. You want to not only just bring out your story, you want to bring out your personality. The same way that I've been showing you, this entire video. Don't just give him the information of what you've been doing. Show him also why you've been doing that. Why did you like this specific position, or why did you dislike this specific challenge? Why do you do community work? Because I want to make a relevant impact. I want to give back to the community. I want to make sure that people around me are their lives are improving. And that's actually part of my future goals, which he or she will automatically get into. Okay. Usually, after the walk me through your resume question, it's usually either why an MBA or why do you feel like you want to do an MBA now? Or it's okay, what are your future goals? In my interview coaching sessions, I usually ask, what are your future goals? Because once I can align your past and your future, once I can align those 2 points, then for me it's very clear on whether or not your MBA, your desire for why you want an MBA and your expectations for what an MBA will provide you with. It's easier for me to assess to see if you are actually applying to the right school. And I think that's what most of the good interviewers actually do, is they try to get the backstory first. They also get to see where you want to go with this. And then in the middle, they fill in the blanks by trying to see if that school is the right school for you. Can we help you get to where you want to be? That's the whole point of an MBA, right? And are your future goals realistic? So really expose yourself here, pull it out in the open. You only got one shot at this. This is only one shot, okay? When you're talking about your resume, you definitely want to quantify it, okay? You want to quantify it in the sense of either, you can quantify like range, for example. You can say, so I have an example from one of my students. I was responsible for building the training program for a new methodology that was being implemented in our bank, and I actually supervised hundreds of employees that range from interns up to top level executives. All of them have since very improved very much, and I feel like the impact I've had here is to have allowed them to really feel at ease in using this new methodology. And what I took away from it was learning how to handle and how to talk to different levels of hierarchy. Because the way you talk to an intern and the way you talk to a CEO or a CFO are completely different. Okay, completely different, and they know that. Any good businessman, anybody in the business world, experienced business world knows this. So when you provide a range, when you quantify a project or an accomplishment or an achievement, and you provide the range here, where you're talking about you supervised or you managed or you trained people from this level up to that level, that's a great way to quantify. Another way to quantify your accomplishments here is talking about frequency. You can say what's the frequency like. Example from another student. Yeah, so on every week I was responsible for providing a newsletter for reviewing, editing, and distributing a newsletter throughout the entire bank to update people on all of the projects that many different cross-department work was doing, so that everybody was on page and up to date. So you're showing that this newsletter that you've been consistently doing. That's another way to quantify your CV and your accomplishments, and that's the same thing for your community work too. If you say that once in a while I go and volunteer, that's different. It's better to say, I make sure that I consistently go. I always try to make sure I'm doing it every other week. Once in a while, unfortunately, I sometimes have to stay later for a project, or we have a holiday on the weekend or something. But then I make it up by going 2 weeks in a row. Okay. And then in a different way, one final way to quantify your results here, quantify any of your achievements is scale. Okay, like how large, numerize them. Another example. Student of mine developed a cost reduction project, to decrease the operational costs of his company, and he could have just said that. One of my projects was to decrease operational costs. It was a difficult challenge, but we got through it all right, and then things have been better. You're not quantifying it like that. What you want to do is something like this project that I've worked on. It was interesting because it was a 14-month project, but we had to finish it in 6 months because of its urgency and with a limited team. And so our team, we actually ended up spending many weekends working on this project and long, long hours, late nights. Not only did we bring down, did we hit the deadline, the 6-month deadline for a project that usually takes 14 to 16 months to complete. But ever since then, we have been saving $200 to $300,000 every month when cost reduction, and that amounts to X amount per year. And our supervisors, my supervisors, were really happy about this, but I don't believe they're as happy as I am about it, because this was actually this was a huge feat, especially for the team of our for the size of our team. And I believe that it was because each member, we all had it in our minds to sacrifice our own times and body and effort in order to make this happen. So I feel that I was very motivated. We were able to motivate each other, and this has been we've had an amazing result from this project. You see the difference from one question from one way to answer it to the other? If you're quantifying, and if you're quantifying either with frequency or with scale or talking about range, you're expanding the amount of detail that you're going into as far as the work that you've done so far. Okay, so that's about it for we're gonna come back to this question in later videos, because that's kind of the essence of the spiderweb method. Like I said, you touch one part of the web, all the other parts shake. So something I said right now, you're gonna hear again later. All right. So that's it. Enjoy a little bit of some of my favorite tunes, and I'll see you in the next video. All right.